Good morning, everybody. Glad to see you all here. My name is Judy Burgett. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. Glad to see everybody here today. I guess we have a couple of announcements. Elizabeth, louder? How's that? Okay. A couple of announcements. Elizabeth Corbett, most of us probably know, is going to have a procedure tomorrow, which I understand she is calling the Great Opening, or the Grand Opening. Some surgery for some problematic cancer that she's struggling with. So we have her in our thoughts and prayers. The other thing, we have Family Promise that we are supporting this week, and that will be, that is all taken care of. Everything we need is all taken care of, so we're good there. I can't think of anything else. So we're going to have Chris Edkins do our singing bowl. Thank you, Chris. That was lovely. And now we're going to have Ellen light our chalice. And we have these words from Deborah Falk. The chalice lit among us is a beacon. The chalice lit among us is a beacon of hope in a world in crisis, a beacon of possibility made manifest in community, a beacon of warmth through our interconnections, a beacon of light illuminating our shared wisdom, a beacon of connection in our being together. And now Ellen's going to take it away.
Well, this morning I want to talk some about this chalice that we just lit. That we light every time we begin one of our worship services. And I imagine many of you know, maybe even more than I do, about the history of the flaming chalice, but I think it's a rich and wonderful history, and like to be reminded of it from time to time. So I'm sure that most of us recognize this flaming chalice, and anytime we see one, we think of it as the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist denomination. We begin every worship service by lighting the chalice and reading some words that reflect on the meaning of the service to come. In a worship setting, lighting the chalice signals the entry of our gathered community, whether we're gathered inside or outside or on Zoom, wherever, where we are gathered into a sacred space. We often light the chalice for other activities, committee meetings, board meetings, discussion groups, anywhere where we are gathered and want to remind ourselves that when we are together as a community, we do create sacred space. And in addition, we see all kinds of artistic renditions of the flaming chalice on banners and stoles and posters and pamphlets. This morning I displayed a few things. I have our two West Side banners back here behind me. The one on your far right is, I think, West Side's first banner that many or several seamstresses in our congregation designed and created for us, and we display it in our church. We've carried it in Martin Luther King parades, pride parades, several times in the Farragut 4th of July parade. So we feel that it's a representation of who we are. This is us. The one in the middle there is our newer banner. We took that one to GA, the General Assembly of the UUA. They have a parade of church banners at the opening ceremonies, and they are very particular about the size of the banner, and our green banner did not match their specifications. So this one was created especially for that, and we particularly liked it because it had the rainbow design going through it there. And then over at the side, I put a quilt that was designed many years ago, back in the 90s, and it's based on a design. It's also what I have on this very old t-shirt here, that an artist before my time, I bet Judy knew her, maybe Yada, Cherry Jorgensen. I only know her by name, but she created this beautiful design that really has become especially a West Side motif of the chalice morphing into a dove. And most of us here have been inside our sanctuary. There are a couple who may not have been, but we do have banners of this design hanging above our chancel table inside. Maybe one day we'll get to go back and see them. I don't know. Some of us enjoy wearing chalice jewelry, and I have even seen a number of chalice tattoos. So they show up everywhere. Some UUs have their own personal spiritual practices that include lighting a chalice. One of my most prized possessions is a ceramic chalice that my son, Andy Galt, made for me some years ago. It's a beautiful blue ceramic, and then around the base are inscribed the words, unity, family, peace, and love. Although we don't necessarily light it with great ceremony and a chalice lighting reading or anything like that, it has illuminated many of our family gatherings over the years, and its very personal history makes it really special to me. Although the flaming chalice did not officially become a symbol of Unitarian Universalism until after the merger of the Unitarians and the Universalists in 1961, it has a long, very long, and meaningful history. In 1415, a Czech priest, Jan Hus, was burned at the stake. His crimes were these. He preached in the Czech language rather than Latin, and this made his sermons very popular and therefore suspect. He said that individuals should be allowed to read the Bible for themselves. He criticized the wealth of the Catholic Church, and during the Mass, he shared the communion chalice of wine with the congregation, with the people, rather than reserving the chalice strictly for the clergy. Evidently, at that time, it was common for the bread to be shared with everyone, but only the priests got the wine. Huss said that sharing the chalice meant that the common people were just as holy as the priests. He was declaring, as Unitarian Universalists do today, that all people have equal access to the divine. After his death, Huss's followers combined the chalice he shared and the flame of his execution, creating the flaming chalice as a symbol in Czechoslovakia of religious freedom. Although Jan Hus was certainly neither a Unitarian nor a Universalist, I think it's appropriate that we have adopted a symbol that historically represents religious freedom and individual spiritual inspiration. In more recent times, the flaming chalice became a symbol directly related to Unitarianism in 1941, shortly after the Unitarian Service Committee was founded, and it was founded specifically to assist people in Eastern Europe who were in danger of being imprisoned or killed by the Nazis. The director of the Service Committee was a Unitarian minister, Reverend Charles Joy. Reverend Joy set up headquarters in Lisbon, Portugal, because Lisbon was the only open port in Europe at that time and was the preferred destination of millions of refugees. Since many of these refugees fled without any identification papers that they would need to help them cross borders, the Lisbon office of the Unitarian Service Committee began creating and issuing travel documents. The USC was an unknown organization in 1941, and this was a special handicap in the cloak and dagger world, where establishing trust quickly across barriers of language, nationality, and faith could mean life or death. Disguises, signs, countersigns, and midnight runs across guarded borders were the means of freedom in those days. Joy asked Hans Deutsch, an Austrian artist who was, in fact, himself a refugee living in Lisbon, to create a symbol for their papers, to, as Joy wrote to Deutsch, make them look official, to give dignity and importance to them, and at the same time to symbolize the spirit of our work. For his drawing, Deutsch borrowed an old symbol of strength and freedom from Czechoslovakia, a chalice with a flame, which he drew in pencil and ink. Reverend Joy wrote back to his friends in Boston that the new symbol seemed to show the real spirit of Unitarian religion. He described it as a cup or a chalice that was used for giving a healing drink to others, and with a flame on top, because a flame was often used to represent a spirit of helpfulness and sacrifice. And so the flaming chalice became the official symbol of the Unitarian Service Committee. The design was made into a seal for papers and a badge for agents moving refugees to freedom. It became a symbol of safety for refugees wary of whom they could trust. For a more detailed account of the work of the rescue work that the Unitarian Service Committee did, you really should take a look, if you haven't seen it already, at the story of the Reverend Waitstill Sharp and his wife Martha. The Sharps risked their lives to rescue scores of Jews and other refugees, many of whom were children, and a few years ago, PBS aired a Ken Burns documentary on the Sharps entitled Defying the Nazis, The Sharps' War. Really recommend it. Eventually, the chalice design formed the basis of the American Unitarian Association's official logo. After Unitarianism and Universalism merged in 1961 to become the UUA, the symbol acquired two overlapping circles to represent each of those two traditions. And many renditions of the flaming chalice of that time, around the time of the merger, featured a very small off-centered cross to signify how Universalism had grown out of the Christian tradition, but was still held open to a world of other possibilities and even unanswered questions. And we're unsure, really, how it came to pass that this two-dimensional image transformed into the three-dimensional image or object that we use in worship. Lori is one person here I know who grew up as a Unitarian Universalist and might have some recollection of any of this, but I certainly don't. But what I read, and I liked the story, was that the path that the chalice took from an image like that to what we light and let the wind blow out, but to our chalice here, went through children's RE programs. Evidently, curricula for RE for children in the late 70s stressed the meaning of the chalice and encouraged children to make chalices in all different kinds of media. Eventually, these chalices morphed into objects that could be lit. I can imagine children liking to play with fire anyway. The first documented uses of chalices in the main sanctuaries of UU churches seem to come from Sundays on which the children and youth led the worship and demonstrated their practice to the adult congregation. And I just find it wonderful to think that a children's craft captured the imagination of the entire denomination. Well, for me, the history behind the flaming chalice gives it especially meaningful significance. But it is important to remember, because we are UUs, that no one meaning or interpretation of our flaming chalice is official. One thing it means for certain is that whenever you see a flaming chalice, you can probably be pretty sure there are Unitarian Universalists somewhere nearby. Like our faith, it stands open to receive new truths that pass the test of justice and compassion. It varies in significance for each of us. When Deutsch designed the flaming chalice, he had never seen a Unitarian or a Universalist church, and he'd never heard a sermon. What he had seen was faith in action, people who were willing to risk all for others in a time of urgent need. And UU minister, Reverend Deborah Falk, who also wrote the words for our chalice lighting this morning, but she wrote these words as well. A chalice lit in our midst is a symbol of our liberal faith, a faith built on the foundation of freedom, reason, and tolerance, a faith sustained by acts of kindness and justice, a faith that visions a world flourishing with equality for all people, a faith that demands the living out of goodness, a faith that requires thoughtfulness, a faith of wholeness. This tiny flame is the symbol of the spark of all this within each of us. So I had an idea for the closing of our service, and I don't know if our group here will feel comfortable with this or not, but I'll throw it out there, and you all can. If any one person thinks it's a bad idea, we will not do it. But we never sing, and personally, I know some people are probably relieved, but I really miss that. And we're talking about a chalice this morning. We're talking about a light. And so I think we need to sing This Little Light of Mine. And I thought if we all stood, we don't have to stand, but that, if you want to, and spread out as far as you would like, we could form more or less a circle. And as Jetta suggested, if you feel better, sing with your back to the circle. And let's sing, unless there is an objection. This little light of mine, I know let it shine. This little light